Welcome to The Explainer. Every single day, we're asked to trust countless companies with our most sensitive data. But what if the whole system we use to prove that trust is, well, broken? We're going to dig into a new report that calls this a trust crisis and see what it says about a path forward.
Seems like a simple question, right? But think about it. Behind that question is this incredibly tangled web. In the way things work today, every partner, every vendor, every piece of software you use, it's not just a connection, it's a potential crack in your security foundation.
And the data on this is, well, it's pretty startling. The World Economic Forum found that for more than half of big organizations, their own supply chain is their #1 cybersecurity roadblock. Just think about that for a second. The very network that's supposed to make them efficient has become their biggest source of risk. Kind of ironic, right?
And look, this isn't some slow drip. It's more like a floodgate just burst open. Verizon's latest data shows that the number of breaches involving a third party literally doubled in just 1 year. That's insane. The threat is just evolving way faster than our old defenses can handle.
So these aren't just one-off problems. They're all symptoms of a much bigger systemic failure. And the report we're looking at today gives it a name that really hits home: a trust crisis.
So what is this trust crisis really about? At its heart, it's a gap. It's this massive chasm between the proof of security we all demand and the, let's be honest, kind of flimsy proof we're actually getting. Just ticking a compliance box or filling out some questionnaire that just doesn't cut it anymore. It doesn't give you the real-world assurance you need to make smart risk decisions.
Okay, so why are these old methods failing so badly? To really get it, we need to look at the whole philosophy they are built on. And this chart really lays it all out. You've got two completely different ways of thinking. On one side, you have the old-school legacy assurance. It's flexible and principle-based, which sounds nice, but it basically puts all the burden on each individual company to figure out the rules. Then you have the newer approach, which is prescriptive. It's based on real threat data, and it has centralized quality control. It's a total shift from good luck, figure it out, to here's exactly what you need to do.
Right, so that whole flexible approach, it sounds good on paper, doesn't it? But in the real world, it's a recipe for disaster. It leads to all sorts of inconsistent security. It creates these massive blind spots that attackers absolutely love to exploit, and it makes it almost impossible to actually compare the security of two different vendors. The whole system is just constantly one step behind the bad guys.
So, if the old model is totally broken, what's the alternative? Well, the report doesn't just point out the problem. It proposes a new model, one built from the ground up for today's threats, not yesterday's rulebooks.
And the core idea is something called threat intelligent assurance. Instead of working from these vague principles, this approach uses data from actual cyber attacks to create very specific prescriptive security controls. So, as the threats change, the requirements change too. It makes sure your defenses are always lined up with how attackers are really operating in the wild.
Now, maybe the most powerful part of this whole thing is a concept called inheritance. It's brilliant, really. It's designed to attack that supply chain problem head-on by making sure companies don't have to reinvent the security wheel over and over again.
Here's how it works. Let's say your cloud provider is already certified for key security controls. Well, you can just inherit those assurances directly. You don't have to retest them. It creates this powerful ripple effect of trust all the way down the supply chain. And people are catching on. Look at this. Over 86% of assessments are already using this kind of third-party coverage.
And this isn't just about being more secure, which is huge. It's also about being way more efficient. By inheriting controls instead of starting from scratch, organizations are cutting the time it takes to do certain validated assessments by almost 35%. That is a massive saving in both time and money. It really proves you can work smarter on security, not just harder.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory. But here's the million-dollar question. Does this threat-intelligent, prescriptive model actually work? Does it lead to better security? Well, let's let the data do the talking.
When you look at the data over time, you see this incredibly consistent trend line. For the last 4 years, the percentage of certified organizations that stay breach-free has held steady at this super high level. That kind of stability isn't luck. It's what happens when you have a system that's designed to adapt and hold a strong defense against threats as they change.
And here it is, the headline number, 99.62%. That's the percentage of organizations with this high level of certification that reported 0 breaches in their certified environment last year. I mean, a success rate like that, it really speaks for itself.
But to really get how huge that number is, you have to compare it to the rest of the world.
In the broader market, independent surveys show that over 40%, of organizations had a breach. So you've got less than 0.5% on one side and over 40% on the other. The difference is just staggering. It really suggests this approach is making a massive difference.
And if you want to see the real-world impact, just look at healthcare. It's the single most breached industry out there. But check this out. Of the 50 biggest, most damaging healthcare breaches reported to the U.S. government last year, not a single one happened in an environment that was certified under this model. Not one.
Okay, so the report doesn't just diagnose the problem. It actually lays out a clear, actionable path for any organization to bridge this trust gap and build security that you can actually depend on.
It's all laid out in this stakeholder roadmap. It's a clear 5-step plan for anyone who's serious about managing cyber risk. Let's walk through those steps.
The steps are actually pretty straightforward. First, you've got to shift away from that old flexible compliance to a threat intelligent model. Second, demand proof that the reports are actually accurate through independent quality reviews. Third, get a handle on your supply chain. Fourth, start securing AI now before it scales the risk up even more. And finally, and this one is key, you have to totally reassess what good security assurance actually means. It's not about checking boxes, it's about measurable outcomes.
Ultimately, the goal here is to completely realign our whole approach to security assurance. It's about focusing on real-world threats and things you can actually measure. By doing that, you build a foundation of trust that's not just strong enough for today's crazy environment, but it's absolutely essential for whatever comes next, especially the explosion of AI.
So that leaves us with a final question, doesn't it? In a world where digital trust seems to be crumbling, could a prescriptive, data-driven model like this actually be the answer? The data we've seen today suggests it's a huge step in the right direction. But maybe the bigger question for all of us is, with threats getting worse every day, can we really afford not to adapt? Thanks for joining us for The Explainer.